Welcome back to Connect and Transform. This is a short video just talking about changes that I've made recently to the document hierarchy and element structure, changes to IDs, and a couple new functions to allow us to reorder the data series. So first you can see that I've added a rule here so that when opacity is changed, that transition takes place over about 1/3 of a second. It just adds a little bit of calmness to the change, and nothing has changed for about half the file until we get to this point. I made a few minor changes to the ID. I was previously appending the name of the series, which was a terrible idea because the name could contain things like spaces that are not valid for IDs. So instead, I'm using S, which is the number of the series, rather than the series name. So I've done that for a couple of IDs. And then we can see that in the series labels, I've added some event handlers to the text labels and the color boxes. So there's 3 new functions to select a series, highlight a series, and unhighlight a series. And those 3 functions are shown here. So when we're selecting a series, we're basically setting all the main data containers to opacity 0.3, except for the one that we want to select. That one we are then going back and setting the opacity to 1. When we unhighlight a series, that's when we move the mouse away. In other words, we're restoring everything to normal. We just set all of our main data containers back to opacity 1. And then when we actually select a series, when we click on it, all we're doing is reappending that data container to its parent node. So we're just bringing it to the forefront and to the highest position in the z-axis. And then the rest of the changes are all just related to, as I mentioned earlier, fixing IDs to use numbers rather than the series name. And then I've added an additional layer of containers around the data just to be able to more easily encapsulate things. And then if you recall, there's 4 or 5 rendering functions. Init data area has not been implemented yet. The code that you see copied into here is copied and pasted from init data line. And then there's also init data bar. And so what you're going to see is basically I've made similar or exactly the same changes to the beginning and ending of those 4 functions. And that accounts for all the changes that you see on screen. And that takes us all the way to the end of the file. So a quick demo. So the only changes I made were to the hierarchy, the ID structure, and then adding event handlers to the series label portion here, and then adding a slight transition delay to the opacity changes. So let's focus on a particular part of this chart. Let's look up here at the top left. Notice that there's a green that is right over a dark purple, and notice that the green line is currently on top. Now, when I hover over the color box or the text of a given series, it stays opacity 1 and everything else goes to opacity 0.3. So you can see that series better than anything else. And when you move your mouse off of the labels, everything goes back to opacity 1. So let's click on something and bring it to the forefront. Specifically, I'm going to click on this light green. I'm going to click on it over here by the series labels. So there I've clicked. And now when I move my mouse off and we focus again on this top left portion, we see that the green has been brought to the forefront and it's now on top of the dark purple. So let's click on dark purple, and now we see dark purple has been brought to the front. If I were to click on blue, same thing. Blue is now brought to the front, though I realize it's difficult to see with all the chaos in the chart. Now, when there's only one series, there's really, it's still happening, but there's nothing to see because when I'm hovering over it, it doesn't change, but anything else would change, but there's nothing else. So there's no change when you hover over, there's no change when you exit. And when you click on it, you're just reappending it to its own parent and there's no siblings. So there's no visible change when there's only one series. And just for another example, we can hover over these, we can hover over the green line, we can hover over the golden line. And in this case, it's a stacked line chart, so it doesn't matter if we click on these because the ordering doesn't matter since they'll never be crossing each other as a result of the fact that they are a stacked chart. So there we have it, just some quick UI changes to allow you to reorder to effectively reorder the series in the visual portion of the graph canvas. In a future video, we'll finish out some of our renderings, including the area and area stacked, and we might look at implementing control charts, which is basically a variant of line charts where the very top and very bottom are deemed like out of bounds, unacceptable values. And so I think I would handle that by just having a definition for maximum acceptable value, minimum acceptable value, and then a coloring scheme for unacceptable values. And then basically that would just be a rectangle that's behind all of our data containers. So behind all of this data, but it would need to be somewhat transparent so that we can still see the horizontal lines that give us our guidelines. So that's what's coming in the future. A few more rendering options for control charts and area charts. But that should do it for the project, and that does it for this video. Thank you for watching.